Hello, it's O'Brien here, and some Brewers gear, even though my Brewers are losing to the Cubs at their home stadium, but that's okay. I'm gonna try to make a video anyways, and I'm gonna talk about why JRPGs. Should I even play them? What are JRPGs? Japanese role-playing games. I have a JRPG hit list, or a tough nut to crack list. I have 24 JRPGs in my collection, digitally and physically in some way at least. And I've probably only not completed, but finished 10 of them. I've definitely started at least 19 or 20, maybe 21. I've started at least. There's at least 2 that I have not started for sure. But why do I like them? How did I get hooked? Why is it a love-hate thing as well? Why are they kind of bad? Why are they a thorn in your side as well? A lot of times I'm going to describe some things about JRPGs, kind of some basic elements. Usually the setting is fantasy or sci-fi or medieval, but not necessarily. There's probably 3 main types of RPGs, Japanese RPGs. There's turn-based action, and the tactical ones that are kind of close to strategy games in a way. And also, these JRPGs have epic scale often, about saving the world and humble beginnings, stories. And there's also grinding and leveling up with experience and statistics and varied characters in that way to make it a little more interesting. And a lot of times it takes leveling up, going into battles over and over again to finally get better. It's difficult to say if they're hard or they're just time consuming. That's a kind of, but they're usually a little bit of both. Sometimes they're maybe too easy, but they're definitely always time consuming. There's also a graphic style about Japanese RPGs, just the look of the characters. If you look at the Final Fantasy games, PS era, there's just kind of a over-the-top look about them a lot of times, or kind of chibi look as well, cartoony, small people, and then sometimes they look different in different kinds of screens, field or on battle screens. A lot of times earlier on, there's a lot of text and dialogue between characters in JRPGs. Usually you have to read it, but eventually it got to be voiceovered and acted, which brought an interesting dynamic to the JRPGs. And Japanese role-playing games are often anime and manga adjacent, but if you're into JRPGs, you don't necessarily have to be into those things, but the elements definitely come into each other. I'm only very basic into anime, and I'm not really into manga, but I can kind of understand that culture tropes from those kind of medias because of JRPGs in a way. Sometimes people are into all those things, sometimes people are just into some of them. And usually there's battles and war and fighting in these games with ubiquitous baddies or monsters or fiends in random battles often while you're walking on the field screen. And then sometimes you'll be transitioned to a battle screen where you're in a battle, and there's those stats in the leveling experience, and the enemies have a certain set level as well. So this kind of makes it a little Dungeons and Dragons adjacent. It's very inspired by it, but it came after that, Western influence, and then Japanese kind of came up with their own spin in the video game format. And also, with that epic scale, you just usually have a world map or a wide area, and you explore the whole world usually with different vehicles or on foot, and it just adds a little, it makes it seem like you're doing a lot and exploring a lot, which makes it interesting. But this has changed a bit. It's not always the case, but it's definitely a JRPG thing. And often in these JRPGs, there's weird set pieces and stories and beats that are often humorous between characters and places, or interesting situations in between all these battles. That's kind of what makes JRPGs interesting or weird. Kind of got that idea recently from somebody else. Thor High Heels, a YouTuber, but that's kind of what, because I saw in his video recently why he didn't like a certain JRPG, that there was a lack of certain beats and set pieces, and a lot of times Final Fantasy VII and other games kind of got into that, Final Fantasy VI, and it kind of made things really interesting and weird and tried to be more multimedia, and it led to the JRPG extravaganza. But these games are really hard to get into, and it takes a lot of time and effort to get in the mood. It's a lot easier to buy them, obviously, than actually complete them. And one way is just to tell yourself to get into the mood and kind of let yourself get into it. Tell yourself you're going to actually beat it and get into it. And also, when you're grinding, you can multitask by listening to podcasts or albums or something while you're grinding. That's one way to finish certain RPGs. Instead of, even though the experience and the presentation of RPGs is very important and interesting, and it makes the story emotionally compelling, when you're grinding, you kind of hear the same battle themes over and over, and you can kind of use that to eventually get through the story and get good enough by putting time into the game and being able to survive certain bosses or certain roadblocks. Should I even devote time to RPGs, JRPGs? Lately I've been kind of into short burst gaming, simple games, so I've been kind of not as much into them. Only very infrequently with the basics. Like I said, I have a hit list, and it's pretty startling, and I'm just going to show some games from that hit list that I have, starting with the oldest one, which is Dragon Warrior for the NES. Got the manual. Next is a weird action JRPG for the PS1, Grand Stream Saga. And this is supposed to be a really basic one, but I just really remember liking the demo of it. It's more of an action one, and it's just kind of funny in a way. And there's actually anime cutscenes in it. And this is the only one that I have in my pile that I've beaten. This is Kingdom Hearts 1. This is another JRPG action game, very infamous, kind of a hated game, but loved game. But it's pretty emo and fun, and it's a good game. I actually finished it. I loved it. I hated it too. The next one I will show off is Xenosaga 2. This is a sci-fi one, futuristic one, space opera. It's pretty awesome. I finished the first one, but not this one. So I'm about halfway through this one, but it's a good one. If you're a fan of Xenogears, that's one that I finished but don't own. And this is the latest one I have, Soul Hackers 2 from Atlas, from the makers of Persona. And I have finished Persona 3 through 5, and I'm a big fan of Atlas's games, and at least the more casual ones. With that, that's me talking about JRPGs, why they're kind of interesting. And thank you for watching. Cheers. Take care.